to seeing this. So I very welcome Wayne Enders here.
Bob, may I take this? Hi, Missy.
Yes.
Hi.
That's my dog. Oh. So we're going to take a walk through Ravenna and Ravenna Township, and I apologize right off the start because I really wanted to get out and take some pictures of Ravenna Township, and the weather got really bad in late October, early November, and I just couldn't get them done. But I will be doing some talking about Ravenna Township. That's where I live. I live in Ravenna Township. I live over in the northwest sector. This is an aerial view of Ravenna that was taken back around the bicentennial. Come on through, John. Didn't want to get run down. That's my son-in-law. And as you can see, it's a downtown shop with the courthouse and the lawn the way it used to be. Coming in from Ravenna from the west side, I thought it was really interesting. I was able to count that we have 3 Western mobile home communities. We have Orchard Estates, and Orchard Estates is right across from Walmart. And then we have, on State Route 59, we have Village Estates, which is just to the east of Myers Home Service. And then we have the West Park Estates, which is just a little bit west, northwest of the Roush Elementary School. So we have a lot of mobile homes, communities in Ravenna and Ravenna Township. Of course, we have Welcome to Walmart. Walmart's an interesting thing because the parking lot's in Franklin Township and the building is in Ravenna Township. And I think more than 1 or 2 of us here have gone to the Midway Drive-In Theater. And this was taken back in the 1950s. And a lot of this property has been developed since then. And a common site that you would see back in the 1950s, early 60s. And the Black Horse Tavern, which was eventually torn down in 2012. It had been established across the street in around 1825. It burnt down in 1907. They built this one, and after a few years, they ended up closing it. Most of you have been to Sunbow Valley. Sunbow Valley's Sterling Smith's Dream, a great place, which is just down the road from where I live. Went to just about every horse show they had from the time I was about 5 years old until I was about 20. And Myers Home Service, which is just to the east of Brady Lake Road. Pop Myers and his boys were there for many, many years until they split up, and Jim remained in this area, and Don remained in this area, and Jim went to Stowe, and then he eventually came back, and he's just across the bridge now in western Ravenna Township. Strawman's Body Shop, it was probably the body shop in Ravenna Township for many years. It's interesting to note that the Pennies that own it now are related to the Strawmans. So it's never gone out of the family. I enjoyed Chestnut Ridge Dairies as a kid, and I'd walk home from school from Brown Junior High or from Roush Elementary and stop and get some milk and some candy bars and so forth. And of course, if I still had some money, I walked across the street and there was a custard stand there. But you had to get your custard and go because it was right by the Wahoo Ditch. And a familiar sight that we used to see in Ravenna, the Chestnut Ridge Dairy and the trucks. We are on West Main Street, And this is Roush Elementary, which was the old Ravenna Township School, which had different additions put on it over the years, here and there, and also over here. And this addition was put on in the 1950s as Ravenna began to grow. Ravenna Township began to grow with the baby boom. And in 1963, we had Brown Junior High School, which now is the middle school, named after H. Larry Brown, who was the superintendent of Ravenna schools for many years. Interesting to note that when I was going to these schools, especially during my Roush Elementary years, we would, during the winter time, we all had dress shoes on, and we'd run and hit the snow, and we'd just go right down that bank, just all the way down to the baseball field. And it's kind of hard to realize that at one time, all of this was the same level straight across. This was all dug out in the 1950s to make way for the baseball field, and in the back, the football field. So there was a lot of earth that was removed. The New Testament Church, which was a Baptist church for many years, and was also where my friend Bob Burgess is pastor right now. And I think most of you, if you've had an animal, especially if you've had a cat or a dog, Richardson Animal Hospital, Dr. Richardson, his father came to town in the 40s, and Dr. Richardson, that we know now, he started practicing with his father in 1966, and he gave it up about 10 years ago. He retired. And it too has been added on. It started out with a building about this large, and then this was all added on in the 70s. This is a new building that was built, and this was built for the Bureau of Employment Services, which now is the Center of Hope. This particular area across the street, just to the northeast, the plaza used to have 3 different homes, and those homes were destroyed, and this plaza was put in. For many, this has had multi-purposes over the years, but most of the time it was a car dealership up until the 1970s, and then it had other uses. Right now it is the Community Action Council weathering program, and this building right next to it, right there, it was a florist shop for many years. If you go over on Mill Street, which is to the south of Main Street, you'll come to the St. Mary's Cemetery, and things have changed a lot over there. Particularly what has changed at St. Mary's is they got rid of all the trees. Back in 2006, they had a tree removal program, and they removed those trees, and some of those trees were over 100 feet tall. And today you don't really see any of the trees in the cemetery. It's all on the outskirts, on the border. Continuing down Main Street and making a left onto Oakwood, continuing down Main Street and going down Scranton Street, we will come to West Park Schools. And West Park was built in 1965 to take in the new neighborhoods that had been built in that area. And on Oakwood Street, we find the Ravenna Water Tower, which was built in the late 40s, which is on the Hotchkiss property. The Hotchkiss, they had that whole city park that we know of today was the Hotchkiss property, and they had a mansion on it, which they tore down in the late 50s because it had caught fire. But all of that became Ravenna City Park. I put this picture in here because these guys are standing on top of that.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. My father used to go up and put the star on this tower every year for 5 years. He would climb it with a star on his back. And my father had no fear of falling or fear of heights. He was a lineman for the Ohio Edison Company. I think that's Rick Coe, isn't it? Yeah. And the things that we used to enjoy that they no longer have because you just might break your arm, or you might sprain your wrist, or you might sprain your ankle. I mean, I just can't believe it. I go to a playground now, there's nothing for me to play on. Tom Mariana, a wonderful man, wonderful human being, who greatly gave to the field of sports during his lifetime, had different careers. One of them, he was a tailor. He had a tailoring business for many years. Ravenna City Park with its beautiful fields. I remember as I was 5 years old and I was riding on the fender of the tractor as my father was grading this area, getting it ready for the first ball field. As I said earlier to the group, Ravenna used to be a very large farming area. And this is one of the places where you can get grain and so forth. And the state of Ohio, back in the 50s and 60s, they built these buildings for their ODOT, which is called the Ohio Department of Transportation. We still have two Northwest mobile home communities. We have Birchwood Manor on State Route 14, and we also have the Cleveland Road mobile home park, which is closer to Ravenna. One of the things that Ravenna was known for in the 1880s through 1897 was the Quaker Oats Company, which was in town before it moved to Akron, and it was very close to Cleveland Road. This does not look like the semi-trucks that pull into to Circle K now. It's a little different, but this is how Pepsi-Cola was delivered. But we do have a remnant of a bottling company, and that's on Cleveland Road. And that was the old Knee-High Bottling Company. Yeah. And then the Grafton family owns this, and Karen has her, Jackie has her beauty shop in there, and Grafton Machine is the other one. One of the ads from the 1930s for Knee-High Bottling. And this is Ravenna Tire, which is has a different name now, but Ravenna Tire started out on East Main Street in Ravenna, pretty much where Jack Cole has his real estate company now. And Portage Ice and Coal was located directly behind the feed mill in Ravenna. And people went there to get their coal. And here's a picture from back in the 50s of the coal that would come in and be dumped, and you would tell the person what type of coal you wanted. You could get like 4 different kinds of coal, and it all burned differently. Now the good stuff costs more, and the cheap stuff, well, it worked. And if you notice, here's the P.L. Frank Lumber Company, which is the big dog today, the bar. And next to it is the Gray Electric Company, and this is part of the service station of the antique shop that Alan Baylog owns at the corner of Highland and Sycamore and Cleveland Road. And there it is. I remember when this was a Pennzoil station back in around 1960, because 2 or 3 doors over is where Russell and Sandy Broad lived, and I'd go over there and visit with Kathy and David. The big dog. And the Spano Bar is still going. I go past that quite a bit. Notice I said I go past it, okay? But I do go past the Spano Bar, and they're still in business, and and Paul G. Mills is still, the building's still there, but since the farming community has lessened in this area over the years, it went out of business some years ago. We also have one of the remnants of the rubber companies, the Trexler Rubber Company on North Diamond Street, and some of the things that they produced over the years. Duracoat, which is right across the street from Trexler Rubber. Interesting about it is that 2/3 of their property is what used to be Ravenna Lumber. You remember Ravenna Lumber Company, owned by Bus Williard? Williard School is named after Bus Williard. When they eventually sold that property, Duracoat made it, and made a continuously long building. I don't know how long it is, but it's a couple of football fields. It is really, really long. You can see how the accordion effect that it has and in North Ravenna, we have the McElworth community. Over the years, it's been amazing. Truly, McElworth community is on the rise. They have really cleaned up the community, and one of the great things that they have, my buddy Frank Harrison and myself, is their new gymnasium that they have at the King Kennedy Center. It's amazing to think that they worked all those years and they're able to get the King Kennedy Community Center as their own gymnasium. Rubberized asphalt. Now, going back to Main Street, when we look at this, I think of Tops. And when Tops Grocery came to Ravenna, they bought 17 homes. They took out a whole community of homes in order to build that, only to go out of business because Ravenna Giant Eagle altered their plans by buying a house to the west. Originally, what was to happen is the Top store was supposed to face Main Street. Well, they couldn't get to one person to sell the house, and so they had to change their plans and put it this way. And eventually, they could not compete with Giant Eagle, and it's been sitting vacant for many, many years. Dos Coronas used to be the open pantry. Remember the open pantries? We had them on both sides of Ravenna. And this used to be the city service station located on the south side of Diamond Street, at Diamond and Main. And they have since added on to it as well. And across the street from it, for many years, for those of you that have been in Ravenna a long time, was the Line grocery store. Clark Line's grocery store was there. And then in 1967, they decided to tear it down and build a bonded gas station. And the bonded gas station that was there for a number of years, and it has remained vacant. And now we have another auto dealership in its place. This was West Main Street before it was, before the demolition and the new building was put up in the 1950s. And today, West Main Street, the building was built in the 50s, is back here, and this was added on in the late 60s, early 70s. And you can see the addition. Fast food came to Ravenna in the 1970s. One of our first ones was Burger Chef. Do you remember Burger Chef across from West Main School? Man, I could eat like crazy there. 25-cent hamburgers, 39 cents for a Big Chef. It was just amazing for a hungry kid. And this was, in my childhood, the Lawson store. The original Lawson store on West Main Street. And now it's the family community services, but before that, it was a alloy company was in the building. And behind it is this home is for veterans, and those columns came off the original Cuyahoga House, which was built in 1827 over in Kent. And when it was being demolished, they were building this home in 1907. They put them on, and then the carpenter ants and the termites got into it. Jack Cole, realtor, who had this home, decided to take them off and put some new ones on to make it structurally sound. And the Portage County Historical Society has those popular columns, solid popular, inside its barn on the Portage County Historical Society property. There's the old Lawson signs. Get that juice up the Lawsons in 40 hours. Remember that?
Big O.
Big O. One man sleeps while the other man drives. On the non-stop Lawson Road. There you go. And cold juice and the tank truck caboose tastes as fresh as the Florida sun. How about that? Isn't that amazing how jingles stay with you? And here we have the Family Dollar, and this used to be what store? Acme store. The Acme, when it moved from downtown Ravenna, moved a little bit west, tore out a whole bunch of houses there in order to build that grocery store. Took a whole community out at that time. And Sherwood-Williams, this building has been there for many, many years. We still have a couple of houses on Main Street on the north side. And when I was a child, this was a Sunoco station. Gene Brown bought this building many years ago, and it's been a car wash, a hand car wash. But before that, it was Portage Cycle Sales. You could get your motorcycles fixed here. This is Bob Kuntz. Bob Kuntz is our anthropologist at the Historical Society. His father ran this gas station, owned this gas station, ran it from about 1936 or 34, somewhere in there, up until he retired. And today, we know it as Advanced Auto Parts. At one time, this used to be a very large block, the Slates block, and what happened was they tore this down in the 1980s in order to put in, at that time, Wendy's. And today, this is what it looks like from the west side. This is what it looks like from the east side. And of course, today we have an Arby's there instead of Slates. Also, Hopkins and Kip was in there for many, many years. This particular building, which is right next to McDonald's, just to the west, has had many purposes over the years. It has been a community store and so forth. But Harvey Middleton, many of you knew who Harvey Middleton was. He lived back here, and he had a little towing company, and he did a lot of things in his lifetime over the years. And McDonald's, they came to town in the early 70s. And at one time, this was a very large area that stretched almost all the way back to Highland, and it was called Zimmerman Motors. Do you remember Zimmerman Motors? Zimmerman Motors, he was a Chrysler Plymouth dealer during the 1960s. I thought I'd throw this in to just show you that this is what they built in 1899 for the Ravenna's centennial. And they put it at Scranton Street, and they had another one down Prospect Street. So when you entered Ravenna, how would you not know that it was Ravenna's 100-year celebration? This is the Ravenna City Mills, taken around 1900, and in the back would, of course, beyond that would have been a railroad station, and also beyond that would be the coal yard. Today we have Bears Motorcycle Museum. That's something you don't see anymore, right? I can't even remember the last time I was at a phone booth. And they have finally, for many years, Miles E. Friend had his construction company in here, but what I remember it for is the Western Auto. Remember Western Auto? It was a great place to go and get bicycles and inner tubes and you name it, and as well as other things. They had a little bit of everything. What I remember about growing up in Ravenna here is this area was owned by Nick Thrasher, and Nick Thrasher had Portage County's bowling alley there. It was called Portage Bowling Alley. It's hard to believe that, and he ended up building the Portage Pro Bowl on the east side of town that superseded that, but that was back in the day when you actually had pin setters. All I can think is when you go home at night, all you can hear is bowling balls crashing into those maple pins. Immaculate Conception Church was built in 1926, and here it is, a picture of it being constructed. And the original Immaculate Conception Church and what it looked like inside. And today, it's had several additions on to the west side of it. It is now a shrine, as well as it has the rector's house. Today, inside the Immaculate Conception Church, and the new building houses the priests. And from the side on Sycamore Street, and this is a picture approximately 1910 when the Immaculate Conception School was started, when it had a very large Catholic community. In 1920, friends, 1/7 of the population of the city of Ravenna was Italian. Was Italian, and you could bet that 1/7 of it was Catholic too. An interesting sight, what I saw for many years, the 1910 with the 1950 addition on Sycamore Street. And looking at the Catholic Church from the back of the 1950 edition. The IC Hall, where many community events have been held, was built in the 70s. And I thought this would be a good picture to show the Oak Rubber Company on South Sycamore Street. Notice remember the old ivy that was on it? Well, when they take the ivy off, that's what happens.
Wow.
It just peels off.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? Look at the root structure on the thing. That's crazy. Today, the building is being refurbished inside, and the outside has already been scraped and painted. It's looking really nice. Back in 1893, Byers Machine came to Ravenna and built their machine works. Today, if you go down Sycamore Street, go past the Catholic Church, and as you cross Spruce Street and to your right, you will see this very long, old factory, and that was Byers Machine, who built hoists for earth-moving machines and motors. We had a streetcar line in Ravenna from 1901 till 1932. Unfortunately, the automobile put the streetcar out of business. I think the funny story is that during Prohibition, Portage County had Prohibition and Summit County did not in the early 1900s. And so people would get on the streetcar line in Ravenna and go over to Cuyahoga Falls and drink, and then they would find the streetcar and come back, and somebody would roll them off. So, and some of the remnants that we still have of the streetcar line on South Sycamore Street. Mill Street, we still have some businesses that are in the old chair and table factories. And one of those businesses is Freddy's Hobbies and the Racetrack, and we also have Dynamic Tool and Die. But these buildings are still back there. People very seldom ever see them. They don't turn into the driveways, but they're old structures from the late 1800s, early 1900s. This particular building has served many purposes, but as a youth in the 1960s, it was a marina. It was a marina. They sold boats and different types of watercraft. And I forget, it started with an S. It was Swandals or something similar to that. But this later became a car wash. Remember the car wash? Cleo's Car Wash? I always remember it because they had those big steam guns. And they would steam the inside of your wheel wells and do your tires and everything, and it was really nice. And today it is the Salvation Army, but before it was a Salvation Army, Jerry Forte had his drapery nook there for many, many years. This is a nice inclusion into Ravenna, having this sign painted, and I believe Main Street Ravenna was able to get funds to have this done, and it looks really nice. Every time I look at it, I say, boy, doesn't the old liquor store look nice? Remember, that used to be the liquor store. That was the Ohio State Liquor Store, which now is Megan's. Megan's Family Cooking. I think all of us remember Moore's Busy Corner. When I was about 10, I got a $1 allowance for mowing the lawn and picking up the house and everything. And I'd go up to Moore's Busy Corner and ride my bike up there, and I'd lay that $1 down. I could get 8 comic books at 12 cents a piece with 4 cents state tax. They had my $1. And I still have some of those comic books after all these years, and the house that was behind it. And next door, it was interesting, right next door were 2 bars in a row. Al's Bar and Jimmy's Bar. And interesting, this is Sycamore Street, and this is Main Street, and this is the busy corner. And this was taken sometime prior, before the streetcar line went out of business. Today, we have a vacant lot, and Jimmy's Bar and Al's Bar is in the same area as where Main Street Ravenna is, and the bus. Megan's Restaurant takes into account where the state liquor store was, and this is, I believe this was Hamilton's Hardware. Is that correct? Hamilton's Hardware.
It was Chichiglia Music at one time, right?
And Chichiglia Music at one time. And it was an antique shop its last multi-purpose for many years. And as you make your way up the north side, you can see the different facelifts that have been done on the buildings. This one was just recently with the 1920 on it, and this particular building where the creamery is at was done in the 1990s. And then as we go to this area, this is the second Scorman building. And I think all of us that are from Ravenna remember Scorman's, don't we?
Yes.
I always remember going down those steps. It was really, those are really long, steep steps. And here we have the buildings going on all the way up till we get to what used to be Piccioni's. This was Scorman's. And a Minard Sporting Good was in here at one time. And the last building would be where Maury's was, Maury's Clothing Store. Now this is what it looked like during the 50s. They tore this building down to put the 2-story, well, I should say 1-story Scorman building in. And then this was torn down, and this is where Piccioni's and the hair salon was. So this is the 1950s, so it's sort of a then and now. All of this was torn out to put this. So there's Piccioni's, there's another company there, there's Miracle Mart, Scorman's Miracle Mart, and then you go on down the line to Minard Sporting Goods Store and Hamilton Hardware and the State Liquor Store. This is what it looks like now. It needs another facelift. Andre used to work for Piccioni, and when he became a jeweler, he went over to Kent, and when Dave Piccioni sold out, he purchased this. So Andre is now our jeweler in town. If we continue to go east, we would have Maury's over here, and then we would have R&E camera shop, and Jack and Jill. We would have Kreinberg's, Portage Furniture, Walter's Shoes, and for many, this had many purposes over the years, but I remember most as Ohio Edison. This is a little more modern, that picture. Notice this is the Buckeye Bar, which is now Main Street Winery. Jack and Jill shop with the new facade on the front of it that they've taken off now since the Ruperts aren't there anymore. And Kreinberg's Jewelry. Remember the clock? Graced the city for a long time. And you can see how the facade was taken off of the front of this building when Jack and Jill was there. And now we have the toy store, Tinkerbox, the winery, Popped. Making our way right on up to Gilletto and Dickinson Law Firm. And then this is a sort of a 60s, 70s shop. This is what it looked like in 1862 when it was built. So we have a lot of old buildings in downtown Ravenna. And as Kevin was making reference earlier to me, he said, you know, every structure that was built in Ravenna was made out of wood at one time. And then as we progressed, we began putting up brick buildings. And those brick buildings have lasted. Now, why did the wooden buildings come down? Sometimes it was for progress, but most of the time it was because of fire. And that's what it looks like today. We had a building here for many, many years, served many purposes. It was an Acme store. That's where Acme was until they actually went out on West Main Street. And then it was Ravenna Savings and Loan, and they fixed it all up, even as a community center. They tore it down, and I do not have the most modern picture yet because the weather got bad, but they've really made that into a really nice park now. And it doesn't look like they had a fire there. It really looks like it was built and designed that way, and now Guido's goes all the way around with its outdoor seating. The Empire Building sat on the corner of North Chestnut Street and Main. It burnt in 1911, and this building was built in 1912, riddle block number 12, and we all know about it today. And one of the things that's happening is they are renovating it presently. The renovation is almost done. Inside of this building, it is fantastic. If you go up to the second floor, this is where they used to have all the nice law offices in town in the 1940s and 50s, and they're reworking all of this. This was commonly what it looked like when you went into a drugstore during the 40s and 50s and the early 60s. There was a little bit of everything to be found there. You very seldom ever got out of the drugstore with just your prescription. I thought that both of these, I decided to put in because you don't see them much anymore, do you? You might find a U.S. mailbox once in a while, but the phone booth, no, they're pretty much gone. This is an interesting building. This is the Poe House, P-O-E, like an Edgar Allan Poe, which used to be a hotel, and today it's the Shoemaker's Outlet. For many years before this, it was the Army-Navy surplus store. Do you remember that? And they had steps that you had to climb in order to get up. It was on the second level. Well, in the 1990s, when they were doing their cityscape, Ravenna was able to do a different sidewalk construction and make it handicap accessible, and they were able to get rid of the steps, and the store was able to come down to ground level. This is what it looked like originally. Pretty nice. The only distraction here is a funeral's going on. That's a funeral coach. That's a brome in front of the building. But you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 stories, and now it's only 2. There we are. Notice this building here. This particular building is the 1853 Ravenna Village Hall. And it was set back at the time because there was wood structures all on each side of it. And what happened was in the 1940s, Scorman came in and he bought this building and he put this facade on the front of it. And so now you don't recognize it as a village hall. But I'm going to show you what he did when he came in. He was a great salesman and he believed in signage. There it is. That's the back of it. You see it's very old. There's been some structural changes done to it. This is 1917 when we're going off the war, with the First World War, and the trucks are going through. You can see 2 streetcar lines going down Main Street, and there is the Village Hall. This is what they did to the front of it. This was in the 1940s and early 50s. So here's Village Hall, and here's the new facade that's put on the front. He extended an addition out to the sidewalk. There you can see it again. This is from the 1970s, probably about 1970, maybe 68. You can see the different buildings and businesses that were in. For many years, this was called the Brass Rail that was on the corner of Main Street and South Meridian Street. And if we look back, we can see that the First National Bank is right here. Now we have the Cimarron Lounge. This was the Alcorn House. A doctor lived here, and this stood for many, many years until Bank One replaced it. Remember the original Horseshoe Diner that was right next to the Ravenna Hotel? And if you needed your shoes shined, you went right next door and it was right there. So if you were at the Ravenna Hotel, you could stay there and sleep and enjoy your stay. You could go next door and get your shoes shined, and you can go one couple more steps and you can have lunch or breakfast. And today it's the Etna House. The Etna House was built in 1867. Looking at it from a different angle from the courthouse lawn. This is what was there before the Etna House. This was built in 1857, and it only had a life of just a couple of years, and it burnt to the ground. A very hot fire, and it was built by Cyrus Prentice, who was an entrepreneur in Ravenna at the time, who had a lot of interest in shipping. He had business with the canal that was just to the south of us. And this burnt, and it was replaced by the Etna House. Now, if you ever wondered how the courthouse lawn has changed, I'm going to show you today very quickly. This is the courthouse lawn in 1865, about the time that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. Here's the courthouse that was built in 1830 by Zenas Kent, and in 1830-ish, this is the county jail. In 1882, an addition was put on that courthouse that you saw in the prior picture. This is the 1882 addition. This is the one that was torn down in 1961. And there was an addition that was eventually put on in 1890 on the jail. I love this picture. It's not very clear, but here's the old courthouse and here's the new one being built in 1960. So as you can see, friends, the old colored house, it looks large in all the photographs, but compared to today's courthouse, it is very small. Today's courthouse. The flagpole. The flagpole was assembled out on Main Street in 1893, and it was brought back in the 19, I want to say, was it 40s?
Oh, when they moved it?
Yeah.
I think around the 20s.
Was it the 20s?
Yeah.
But that's today's flagpole. This is the old fire department, located pretty close to where the one is today. This was taken in the early part of 1900, probably about 1906 or 7. And today's fire department on Parkway. And this was built in between 77 and 1980. This particular structure was used for Ravenna city government for many years and became the police station. Some of our early law enforcement officials. This is William Hotchkiss, who was related to the family that owned the mansion and the property in City Park. And this was a long time police officer in the Sheriff's Department and in Ravenna City, John C. Goodenough. At one time, this was a grocery store and a wine store, which is now Ravenna City Hall. I believe A&P was in this at one time. Looking on East Main Street, we have the 1889 Riddle Block number 1, and we have, as you can see, there's been a story or two taken off of this one as we move our way towards Deluxe Pastry Shop. And of course, these are the businesses I remember from the 1950s to the 1980s, and that was Deluxe Pastries. I love going there. That's before I had to be concerned about my weight, you know. And that was a great place to finish off 6 cream sticks. And Miller's that had flooring and draperies and so forth. And Kircher's, Dick Kircher, longtime councilman, he had his dress shop as well as his shoe shop in there. And you want to know what it looks like in black and white? That's what it looks like in black and white. County Savings and Loan, which is now Hometown Bank, the Bar 10. And Rockin' Wells was right in that place too. They cut hair. That was Frank Rock and Gene Wells. Gene, he ended up going out to California. He cut movie stars' hair for a few years and decided he wanted to come back to Ravenna, and that's where he finished. This is 1962, a parade in downtown Ravenna. 1962, Ravenna Band. A 58 Chevy. And notice how close the courthouse is to the sidewalk. That's what I really see, is that it's right there. Main Street, Ravenna, Ohio. Again, Fowler's Drugstore. Woolworths. I loved Woolworths, but what I loved more was Nichols. Nichols Dime Store. It was a great dime store. The Tavern, 1888, which before that was the Bar 10. And we had the second oldest drugstore in Ravenna up until about 1970, and that was Lyon and Morgan's Drugstore, which had multiple names, but it was founded in 1850. And again, a look at the block. And then we cross the alleyway and we come to what used to be the big Rexall drugstore. And this building was where Wright's department store was. Remember Wright's department store? Well, before Wright's department store, this was where the original White Hospital, a wooden structure, was built in 1894 and burned down somewhere around 1905, 1907. And the building that I just showed you is the building that replaced it. It ended up being Wright's department store. And I actually have a picture of what it looked like inside of Wright's department store back in the day. If we're looking across the street to the north, we see the old bus station. This is the old bus station with the stairs removed. There used to be steps. There used to be 3 steps going up. Those have been removed in the streetscaping of the 1990s. And this used to be, right in here, the old Opera House, Reed's Opera House, when it was 4 stories rather than 2 stories. It used to go all the way up here. And they took that down in 1937. What replaced the Riddle property, including the old mansion that was there, they had an old mansion across the street, and that was replaced by the Sunoco gas station, and Walgreens replaced the Sunoco gas station and the Elks Club. Every day after track practice, all of us would go up to Dairy Queen on South Prospect Street and get something, depending on how much money we had. And that's where the Dairy Queen was at this time. Now it's Sunshine Cupcake Company. And here we are looking across. We're on South Prospect looking across. This area here used to be a big warehouse district that was torn down in the 1990s as well and made into parking. And this is rail block number 10 right here. And the new addition put on by the prosecutor on the Polstoy building that was built in 1967. And Ashton Heating and Cooling and Alarm Companies right here. The Prospect House came to town in the 1960s. Senior housing, one time was one of the tallest buildings in Ravenna. And when I was growing up as a kid, this was not a restoration center, but this was a paint shop. This was Majestic Paint Shop, and you could get all the kind of paints you wanted. And the Beats family, they owned this. They also gave art lessons. You could, if you wanted to paint, learn to paint, and watercolors, oils, you could get it right here. You could get all your painting supplies for artistry here. This is what the Methodist Church looked like from 1848 to 1916, and it was replaced by this building. And an addition was put on it in the 1950s, which ended up becoming the Belfry, which many of us kids went to on Friday nights for something to do. Stay off the streets. This was built in the 1960s. This was the dry cleaning center, Marshall's Dry Cleaning Center, which at one time was on South Chestnut Street, but moved over and was in business for many years. Some of the homes are now businesses. Darla's Floral Design across the street from the Methodist Church. And if we look south of the Methodist Church, we see some houses which again house businesses. And at one time this was the Wolf Funeral Home, which later became the Morgan Funeral Home. This is Ron Kane's home on South Prospect Street. Diane and Ron Kane. And the First Christian Church, which was built in 1617, which is now a union church of 3 different congregations. They have since moved out to Gladys Street on the east side of Ravenna. How many of you remember Cherry's Steakhouse as you go all the way out on Prospect Street, out by where the church is now? Cherry's was well known, and after this burned to the ground in I believe it was 64, he was able to build Cherry's on top of the mall in Warren, on the east side of Warren, which was a very popular place. South side of Ravenna, Prospect, in the Skeels community, Vern Matthews and Desiree Lydell were both leaders in building up the Skeels community on the south side of town in Ravenna Township. I took this picture. This is of my friend, and she was 98 years old at the time. This is Eddie Mae Prisby, and she could still tickle those ivories. She didn't make any mistakes, and she played the piano down at Portage, at the Portage Hospital, which Robinson Memorial Hospital, until she was 99 years old. Hard to believe we had the streetcars in town, and that is the 1889 Chestnut Street building, Riddle Block number 1. Looking across, this used to be the Second National Bank, and they used to have a great big sign up here. At one time, the third story, which burned off, that was where the Masons met before they built their hall. And this is the old movie theater. We had 2 movie theaters. We had one on South Chestnut Street, and we had one on North Meridian Street. And this used to be Marshall's Dry Cleaning at one time, and this used to be the Mendiola Barber Shop as well. There was a building here at one time, but it burned, and they made a little park out of it. And if we continue to go south on Chestnut Street, we see the Postaway building that was built in 1967. The Vale Edge Dairy Building and the Vale Edge Restaurant, which was built in 1928, and the addition that was put on in the 70s, and the parking lot. All of this used to be homes. Our 717 Bank. In the background, the Congregational Church. And this building, there used to be homes all through this area. Kevin provided something on Facebook. I'll show you that in a minute. But anyways, this building used to be the Sinclair gas station with a big rhinoceros, brontosaurus on it, right behind the courthouse. They tore that gas station down and built this. And there used to be a beautiful house here, right there. That was yours, wasn't it?
Yeah, I put that up there.
I really liked that, by the way.
Thanks.
That was really good. See how times have changed. And the Congregational Church, and it has changed too, because their parsonage used to be right here, and they tore the parsonage down and made a little park instead. But this is what it looked like, almost at the same location, not exactly, from 1856 to 1926. This is what the Congregational Church had. The interesting thing about the Congregational Church is when they built it in 1926, they put a fully furnished bowling alley in the bottom of the church. They now have it as a study, but they had a bowling alley there. That what you just saw, that was the Seibert building. A couple of nice homes came out of that were demolished in order to build the Seibert building in the 70s, and now it's an urgent care. Going over to South Meridian Street, North Meridian is Maury's, 236 West Main Street. How do I know that? I worked for Maury for 9 years. They thought I was his son. And an old picture with R&D and the Buckeye Bar. Now it's a toy store. Guido's Pizza, the original place, not a very good slide, but it was taken off of a movie. So I remember standing out there many Friday nights and on Saturday nights, waiting for the pizzas, conversing with all the people I knew. Today, this is what it looks like. There used to be housing in this area too, and Bank One bought this property to make their drive-through, their second drive-through. The first one was on the original building in the back, and then they built this drive-through, and now it's a heating and air conditioning company. Bank One, and this is where the first drive-through was, right here on the building. There's a Robinson home that you showed me the other day. And this was, the benefactor for Robinson Memorial Hospital was Robinson. And this is across the street from where his home was, but we know this is where you get your driver's license and license plates, and there's a couple of physicians in here as well. But across the street, you just saw his home. This is the building that replaced it. And today, this is what it looks like. Several additions. This is now Veterans Services. It used, at one time, is where the nurses lived, and then it became a place where they did, over here is where they did their laundry. On South Chestnut Street, just to the north, what used to be the upper parking for the Robinson Memorial Hospital was the Chestnut School. And that Chestnut School was replaced by the Tappan School in 1955. They tore this building down. It was almost 100 years old. It had, in the basement, they still had dirt floors. They had all grades in this school at one time. Some say that this was the first quote-unquote high school because they did house in the upper portion a few students that actually went to high school. Up until about 1920, most people only went to about 6th to 8th grade. They got their grammar school education. The Eli Restaurant was built in the 1950s by the D'Amicos. It's been closed for a long time. Just to the south of that was a Worcester Mills, and I think you may have seen the recent photographs in the newspaper where a cleaning company is coming in and cleaning that place up now. They demolished it a few years back. It was Oak Rubber #2 factory for many, many years during my childhood. And these are the Worcester Mill machines to make the garments. And this is what it looks like last summer. Now, for many years, we had a beautiful Italian-American society building. Went to many dinners down there, many functions. You got fewer and fewer people that wanted to run an Italian-American society. People were moving out, getting older, passing away. And now is the Portage Dental Group. Just to the south of that is the Baltimore and Ohio Depot, which it was torn down many years ago, back in the 50s and 60s. My grandmother used to do that every day. She'd go to work. She'd get on the commuter train and go from Manaway up to Cleveland to work for a Dresser-Graf Moldograph. And this is also where the original P&O Canal was. The Pennsylvania-Ohio Canal that went to south of Ravenna, right here. This is Montney's hardware store, the second store. And we had some rubber companies up in this area as well. We're on Lake Street, and you can see some of the buildings that are still there. Most notably, Ravenna Oil. The parts store went out of business. And if we go to the west, we run into the old factories, which many of them have been torn down. They used to belong to the Worcester Mills as well, the old dye houses and so forth. There's just a little bit of it left. As you can see, this is where they were, and they've all been torn down. Torn down in the last 10 years. The original A.C. Williams Company on Hazen Street, from about turn of the century, 1900. It was a very large complex. When A.C. Williams moved from Chagrin Falls to Ravenna in 1893. And then they ended up making a number 2 factory, which was right across from Ravenna Stadium on Walnut Street. And you can see where some of it has been torn down. Ravenna has had a series of improvements with their wastewater treatment plants, particularly on Holland Avenue. And as Ravenna began to grow during the baby boom era, we had to construct more elementary schools, and Williard was our last school that was constructed in Ravenna in 1971. Southwest Ravenna Township, we have Summit Estates Mobile Home Park. It's a very large park just before you get to Lakewood Road. And when you get to Lakewood Road, on the southwest corner, you will find Lake Hodson. Lake Hodson used to be called Muddy Lake, and Muddy Lake was a man-made lake for the Worcester Mills. They needed a lot of water to run their machines. And they actually owned Sandy Lake at one time as well. Pine Lake Lodge, spent a lot of time there in my youth. About a year or so ago, it burned down. But it was, they used to have Pine Lake Lodge out there on the corner of Lakewood and Summit Road. Going back to Ravenna, we finally got a movie theater several years ago, the Ravenna 7. And I hate to tell you this, folks, but I have not been in there yet. I have not been in there. I keep telling my wife we're going to go see a movie, but I just keep pushing the dial on the TV set. It's pretty hard when you got movies on demand and all that stuff. And this is the Episcopal Church next to Short's Funeral Home on Cedar, West Cedar Street, and the Huntington Bank. And if we move on down a little bit, we come into the Key Bank, which I'll show you in just a minute. This is its parking lot, and this is the old Jennings home. Diane Kane, her parents had this home, and she still owns this home. And this is the Key Bank that is beyond the Huntington Bank. And if we look at North Chestnut Street, this was where the Record Courier was before it moved out of town to Kent and then to no more. The Western Reserve Hotel on the corner of East Cedar Street across from the post office. The way it looked many years ago.
They just threw everybody out of there.
They just threw everybody out of there. They just condemned the building. And interesting enough, across the street from the Western Reserve Hotel, where the post office is, was the second home of the White Hospital, which became the Portage Hospital, which became Robinson Memorial Hospital. And that's where it's at. This was built around 1930 to 32, and there has since has been an addition put on it over here. The magnolia tree fell down last spring due to snow weight, and they had to take it out. I love that tree. I could always tell when spring had come by seeing the magnolia tree at the post office. This serves as a multi-purpose house now, but basically it's called the Hive. You rent it to do your business and have meetings and functions. On East Highland Avenue, was the original Ravenna High School, Walnut, and they say Bowery, but before it was Highland Avenue, it was Bowery Street. This used to set back, and at one time they didn't have enough room, so they put an addition on the front of it. And we know it as the Walnut School now, but this was put on the front of it. And today, where the high school, old high school was, for 50 years, is where Ravenna has their business administration and service department for the schools. Across the street was the Johnson Box Factory. I remember when I was in first and second grade, looking out at that all the time. I very seldom looked at the chalkboard. But I look at that building, and it caught fire in 1967 and burned to the ground, and that's what we have today. Majestic Dry Cleaners has been on Cedar Street for a long time. Still one of the few places you can get dry cleaning done. Dry cleaning is just not a popular thing anymore. The old Record Courier, the back of it. And this is the photo I really enjoy. Montney Hardware. You remember going into Montney Hardware on those wooden floors and smelling all that oil? And all the oil from was downstairs where they did all the fitting of the pipes and so forth. And then you could get all your hardware on the first floor, and you go up to the second floor, and they would have appliances, and then you go up to the third floor, and there would be furniture and stuff up there. It was all there for you. They made sure, the Montneys made sure that you could do one-stop shopping. Clark's Pharmacy, there's my Nichols. And of course, the Oddfellows, they put this facade on the front of this building in 1874, and the Oddfellows are still in there. There's a few of them, and this guy over here is an Oddfellow. Yes. Of course, you already knew that. Some things you can still see, folks. Some of the old signage. This is on the side, on the east side of old Montney Hardware Store. And even, things that they used to have. In the back. And looking over at the Riddle, Coach and Hearst Company. And of course the new Ravenna High School. And before you get to Ravenna High School, this is where my friend Paul Moore has a city gardener and florist. A really beautiful interior. And when you get to the tracks, there's the old Lawson store. This is the second Lawson store. First one was on Main Street. I showed you across from West Main Street. And now this is where the Circle K is before you get to the tracks. And the way the Portage County Historical Society used to look before we did our major landscaping in the last year and a half, and that's the way it looks now. And the Strickland home. And we built the clock tower in 1972, and we're looking into trying to renovate it again. Ravenna High School, the medical arts building that many of you go to see your physicians, or maybe to get your hair done. The new Ravenna Township administration building, and for the cemetery at Maple Grove, which is now a Union cemetery, which opened in 1813 and continually is expanding. It's just amazing how many people are in Maple Grove Cemetery. The Woodlands, which was the nursing home that came after the one out on Infirmary Road. And the Adult Care Center that's to the front of it for Coleman. and also the Veterans Administration. And in the 1970s, we started looking at building a larger campus for Robinson Memorial Hospital, and they decided to buy 2 farms that were out on the north side near State Route 14, where you didn't have to come through Ravenna to bring people for an alternate route down Lover's Lane or Loomis Parkway. And this is the campus. This used to be 2 farms. Solomon Farm and the Tisher Farm. Solomon and Tisher. What we see today also, Coleman built their campus for the Sue Hetrick building to the west of it. And if we cross State Route 14 on Chestnut Street, Old 44, we come in the Sheetz gas station. When they built the Sheetz gas station, they said it's going to be torn down. And they said that because they built gas stations on all the corners before, and they all went out of business. Well, Sheetz has enough going for it, especially with their gas prices and with their food. I guess they have really good food, that they've made a go of it. And there's a new Sheetz gas station, by the way, over in Brimfield. If you haven't been over on 43, there's a new Sheetz gas station in front of the Holiday Inn. Social Security Administration and some of the businesses that are back in that campus. And Biomed has a campus there as well. And of course, Loomis, H.R. Loomis, who was one of the most wealthiest men in Ravenna, was a great attorney and a great entrepreneur. He sold one of his big property acquisitions to GE in order to make the GE company where they manufactured light bulbs and a lot of other things. And today we have several other companies that have taken that campus and redeveloped it and built new buildings all along. And this is just north of Maple Grove Cemetery. This was built in 1879, and they're in the process of renovating it. That's a Maple Grove front building. And some raccoons. They are alive and well in Ravenna, by the way. My grandfather's plot. And when I was growing up as a kid, where I learned to play golf, or I guess where I learned my bad habits in golf, let me put it that way, was at the Chestnut Hill Golf Course. It was inexpensive, and after you got done with all your frustration, you could go in and you could buy a cherry Boston cooler. And I love those cherry Boston coolers at the clubhouse. And now it has a couple of businesses in it, but particularly a Vista Veranda, which is an assisted living facility, as well as where you had the real long par 4, the only par 4 they had, 400 yards from here all the way back, is the park, another one of Chestnut Hills Park. Vista Veranda. One time this building was world famous. This was the Ford Seed Company that sold seeds all over the world. The last owner was Ernest Jones, who was a trustee of the Portage County Historical Society, and he donated a lot of his books and things to the Historical Society. It is now an apartment complex. Washington Street, what was really great, as I was growing up, around 1962-63, they built the new Boys Club. And I loved going to the Boys Club. That was a great facility. You could play pool, you could play table tennis, you could do a lot of things. You had a lot of activities. It was great. It was just right across the street was Ravenna Stadium. that boys club now is a community action council, and through a Kiwanis grant and labor, they were able to build a adaptive playground on that campus. Believe it or not, what you see right here, what I showed you in the last slide, cost $90,000. We had to go for grants and raise money and spend some of our own to put it together. I'm a member of the Ravenna Kiwanis Club. And if you went to Ravenna High School up until 1974, this is what you saw if you were lucky enough to graduate, okay? After 1974, they started having their graduations over at Kent State, and then when the stadium was built, and a little bit later, they started having their graduations down at the stadium. This was Walnut School was succeeded by the Highland School right here on Washington Street, and now this building is the Board of Education and the Ravenna Preschool. Later it was called Carlin Elementary. North Freedom Street, what we had going for us on North Freedom Street for many years, past the Armory was the Ravenna Fairgrounds, which was the Portage County Fairgrounds, which was the big granddaddy of them all before we had a big fire in 1932 and things started going south after that. And by 1947, it was sold off and the Wilson family bought it and they built the fairgrounds, the community out to the west of here. And this is what you saw in 1913. They made sure that you parked all those contraptions out in front and didn't scare the animals because they didn't have the mufflers they have today, folks. They were loud. They were louder than lawnmowers. And they backfired too. And this is what the fairgrounds looked like. And the Armory, which is now the City Hall Annex, C. Van Harkum. I remember climbing on the tank that used to sit out front. Remember the tank that was there?
Sure.
Any of you graduated up to about 1985, you might remember there was a tank there. And the new Elks Club. They were given some pretty good size revenue by Walgreens to purchase their building and their parking lot. And they were able to come out on North Freedom Street and build this facility. And across the street are a number of enterprises, a number of businesses that go all the way down to 14. In 1967, this was the Container Corporation of America that built on the corner of Freedom and State Route 14. And of course, now we have our share of these units throughout Ravenna for storage. The storage business is a very, very large business. We all want to accumulate things. This is what the campus of Maplewood Career Center looks like, which was Maplewood Vocational School, built in 1975. It now has a new look and of course new policies and everything, but had they had this school in 1969 or 70, that's probably where I would have gone. Because my father and my grandfather were plumbers and electricians. So what did I have to lose, right? So they didn't have it, so I just decided to go to college. I would challenge any of you to try to find a building when it looks like this. I don't know how many times I came up to Ravenna with the sun setting to find this glowing like this for just like 30 seconds. Again, on Main Street, making our way east. That gal didn't appreciate it. And this is what it looked like inside. This was the main bar, and that looks like President Ford, so it must have been the debates in 1976. Across the street is the Phoenix building, which I've showed you a couple of pictures of, with the Oddfellows and with the Second National Bank and Clark's Pharmacy and Nichols and Montney's. That was all in this building. This is what it looked like in 1865, and this is what it looks like today. And that's what it looked like when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s. Veronica DiPaolo, Sue Ames, and Sherry Banks. We know those people, don't we, Jane? Yeah. IOF. This is one of the few pictures that I've seen that is really good. This is where you remember Harper's being on the corner, and this clearly shows where the Opera House was, right here. And it's all the stories before it was chopped down. And there's Isley's. Isley's was a mainstay in Ravenna for many, many years, run by the Seifer family and then by the Widener family. Looking at it today, the same block, notice it's not very tall. See? This was the old bus station. And then Widener's ran the bus station. They were the last ones to run the bus station before it went out of business. And then Baxter Widener built Widener's family restaurant, which was very popular. And in the 1970s, they had the Hofbrau room, and that's Chris Chichek, and that's Joe Marie Pandolfi, and that is Palmer. And there's the buses. And looking across the street, we have the Coach and Hearst Company, which went out of business in 1931. And if you notice, this building is as tall as that one, and this one is almost as tall as this one. This was leveled by fire several times, and now it's just a one-story building across right here. And this one has been cut down as well. I'll show you that in just a moment. See how it's been cut down? And across the street where Walgreens was the Riddle Mansion. That would be where their parking lot is, to the east of Walgreen building. Beautiful houses. Look at that other one. That's something.
And that was Mertz, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah. It just was a beautiful community. And then they tore down, the Elks got the Riddle Mansion, and they had it for several years. And then in 1965, they had that whole area leveled, and they built this modern building, which was later leveled for Walgreens to be built. That's the area. All the way over there. And as we move east, that's Prospect Street, moving east. Again, that used to be this tall, it's gone. What it looked like during the old days. And at one time, this was Bohecker's Business College. And the library and its addition, one of its additions. It had another addition that was put on the back of it. This is what it looked like in 1924 when the group was finally able to build the library that we're now in. And across the street on the south side of Main Street, we had a series of gas stations, which have turned into pizza parlors and a lot of other things. But we had a lot of gas stations on. Bob tells me that one time was there 30 gas stations within a mile?
I think it was 27.
27 gas stations within a mile radius of Ravenna. Every corner had a gas station on it, and they were almost the same price, 29, 30 cents, whatever. Some of the buildings that have been restored, the old Christian Scientist building, which is in disrepair right now. This particular building was the Masons for many, many years. Jim's Gym had the lower part of it for a long time. And this is Dr. Miller's dentistry, but at one time this was Bohecker's as well. Well, they got another Taco Bell coming up out at Walmart.
I think it's open. We drove by it last week.
Is it?
In the drive-thru, yeah.
Yeah, man. Somebody's taste buds must be off. And here's CVS Pharmacy, and this is Dr. Land's building. Dr. Land, he had several homes taken out for this to be put in on Walnut Street. And the old open pantry is now a State Farm Insurance. And the Dairy Queen is where the Humble gas station used to be and where the Portage County Historical Society was before that. We all remember Ravenna High School. Looking out from the bridge, Bob took this picture just before it was destroyed. And the measles playing in the old girls' gym.
Joe Wash.
And this is from my 1973 high school yearbook. This happened last year at the corner of Clinton and East Highland Avenue. And it used to happen every year when I was going to high school. Frank and Mary Lou Miller lived over here. The girls, Jan and Karen, they lived here. And you could take your canoe down there. You could bet on it every year. Inside Ravenna High School, and what Ravenna High School looks like, the property today. I understand they're going to build a complex there. They're going to build a new Ravenna administration building there. It's in the works. And the old Board of Education, which is now a psychological services. And Green Acres, which was a very large wooded area just to the east of Ravenna High School, which became a housing area. And Cook Insurance across the street. And this was a new development in the 60s, putting a series of doctors' offices and insurance companies in here on Lawrence Street. This is the Tappan home. This is where Tappan lived. And at one time, it was twice as large as this. They took the other half and they moved it to Myrtle Street. So it was a huge mansion at one time, and that other section's in Myrtle Street now. And it used to extend right out to here. And at one time this was a gas station too, that was torn down and planted with seed. The original wood funeral home for Ravenna and its annex, its addition. The new brick road on South Freedom Street. What used to be Tappan School on Tappan Court. Wood funeral home. And some of the beautiful houses. I believe that one was owned by the Patrons. They were the last family that I knew that owned it.
That's our house.
And this is that your house?
Yeah.
That's your house? That's Paulicine house. It wasn't Paulicene's?
Right.
Yeah. I used to go over and pick up Nancy and Sandy. And my 1965 Ford with the glass back mufflers on it. And most of us know A&W root beer. It's still there, okay? It's changed a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, changed a little bit. I drank, we had a root beer contest, nickel root beer night. We had 5 people in my 65 Ford, and all of us were on the track team. We tried to see how many root beers we could drink. I drank 14. Another person drank 16. The last person, his name was Bob Delaney. And Bob Delaney drank 19 of them. Needless to say, his stomach got a little bit queasy, and he got rid of it real quick. And that stain stayed on the asphalt until they put the surface cover over it. The Giant Eagle, which has been replaced by the original one. And don't you remember, ladies, when you used to go shopping like this? The good old days?
Oh, no.
Club crackers.
Yeah. And farmer's market. Every time I go to Mimi's, I think a car's gonna drive through. I really do. And that's Mimi's today. And this is the area where the Raven used to be.
Oh, that's what it
Raven Drive-In. And Chipotle across the street as we're moving east, and the Wellness Center, and Siciliano's Pizza, which came to town in the late 70s. And this is where the Carousel Dinner Theater was, when we had the Carousel Dinner Theater. And they moved out because of flooding in the eastern part of the city.
is.
And this is what it looks like on Spruce Street last summer, when it flooded, when it couldn't take all the rain. And the car wash next to the Ravenna Savings and Loan, which is now the United Way. Such a beautiful building. This was built by Walt Sisley. This was the last big contracting job that he had. And Mark's, which was the A&P store, and those buildings that sit out in front of it. And the old Loomis Mansion, which became the Dewey Gatz's mansion, which then became the Portage Community Bank, which has an addition on it. And the Pizza Hut, which has been around for a long time. The old Dodge dealership, and who can forget the East Park Restaurant? I remember going there, staying up all night, and going at 4:30 in the morning to have pike, P-I-K-E, fish. A pike dinner at 4:30 in the morning. $4.50. That was 4 hours at Maury's. That was Maury's paying me. 4 hours at Maury's, man. I ate it slow. Look at those dinner prices. And the gas station that replaced East Park. And this is a vintage photo. This is, if you go on through, this is Route 5, and that's Newton Falls Road, and this is 14. That's the old 14 bar, and over here would be where they built the Portage Pro Bowl, which was Sherwood Lanes, and also the restaurant was here as well. AutoZone, just up the street from Siciliano's, and the Red Barn. The Red Barn was the first fast food restaurant really that come to Ravenna. We used to call it the Dead Barn, mainly because we knew the people that worked there and how they treated their food, and most of it I think was found on the floor rather than on the grill. But they had very cheap meals, inexpensive meals. Today it's Riley's Auto Parts. Haver we know of Haver Motors, and it's now Portage Trim and Mongoose. And below that is Aldi store and the Dollar General store, and in the back of it is the old Sherwood Lanes and the LK Restaurant, which was just to the east of the bowling alley, and which is now a Dollar Tree, and Circle K is on the corner of 14 and Main Street and 5. Gladys Avenue is where the First Christian Church is now. And that's where they were. They were on South Prospect Street, but like a lot of churches that have downsized in membership, they've chosen smaller buildings where they can afford the heating and electricity for their members. Windmill Lakes came in 1971. Most of us have been out to Windmill Lakes, have been to their restaurant. Look at the prices of those meals back then. Unbelievable. Even for $1.85 today, I still wouldn't eat liver and onions.
Yeah.
Inside the restaurant, like Cipriano's. And most of us that lived in Ravenna any length of time went to Holiday Sands. Holiday Sands was on State Route 14, owned by the Clone family, and today it's owned by the Moose Club. And to the east of that is Maple Dell Manor, which is another large mobile park facility. There is Prospect Street, we have Walgreens, and as we move down North Prospect Street, I wanted to kind of end the program in this area because in this building here, this beautiful building in the back, this is where Dr. Palmstrom had his offices. And Dr. Palmstrom was the one that delivered me when I was born. And he was my early doctor. And then when my pediatrician was Dr. Lang, and I think some of you knew who Dr. Lang was. He was over in Kent. And then when I became an adult, this building right here is where Dr. Neely was. And Dr. Richard Neely was my physician for many, many years, and his associate was Rufus McCormick, who was a great surgeon as well. Portage County Historical Society, doesn't look like that now, we don't have trees, but we are in the height of winter right now, and it's going to get worse. I hope you folks are able to stay in on Tuesday and Wednesday, because I understand that temperatures are going to be below 0. This was the balloons that we looked at in 1909 to celebrate Ravenna's 110 years. And this is the type of balloons we have today. The beautiful balloons that are out at Sunbow Valley. Ravenna, once the balloon capital of the world, is now the home of the Balloon Affair. This is a picture of Bob when he was getting his God and Country, back when he was about, let's see, he was about, he's 16 years old, 18 years old, 18 years old. And at the same time in 1962, that's me getting ready for Easter. So that's what we looked like in 1962. And Bob and I have known each other since 1959.
You had more hair.
Yeah. And here we are today. So I want to thank you all for coming out for this long presentation, but it was like writing a book for me, and it was good to go back and revisit these things and to reminisce. And this will be on YouTube, and as are my other talks, I believe, and you can look them up and keep abreast of the changing history of Ravenna Township and Ravenna City. The eclipse.
That's a great picture.
Thank you for being here today. be careful driving home. It looks like it's slushy and it looks like it's gonna freeze, so. I will be around for a few minutes after if you wanna ask me some questions, okay?
I had Dr. Lang when I was a child.
Did you?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks to Kevin for making sure that we had a nice place to hold the last 3 talks. And if you're into something really different, I'm putting together a UFO program for next summer or fall, okay?
Looking forward to that one, too. That's gonna be great. You're good with that.
Since they found it.
He was hoping for something.